Hi, welcome back. Happy New Year! I honestly cannot believe that it's 2026. It feels wrong on the tongue, but this is just an average January. What I didn't do in the year of our Lord 2025, thank God that it's over, I did not make a favorites of the year video because I wanted to wait, because I was reading so many very good books. I was reading so many good books the last weekend of the year, and I was like, I need to like slow down. I need to just enjoy these books and then in the new year make my favorites of the year. I'd say that in general this year I read 106 books. Yay! I don't really care if I meet my Goodreads goal. It's just a goal. It's just a number. It's just there to motivate me sometimes. The thing that it's most interesting though is that I read a lot less 1 stars. I think I said it in my worst of the year, but I read also a lot less 5 stars. I reread a lot of my favorite comfort books because 2025 was such a fucking nightmare. So those were 5 stars. And then I read a lot less new books that truly inspired me. But let's talk about my favorites. I compiled a list, 9 books. So not even a top 10. I wanted to do a top 9 because these are truly my favorites. First 3, because they are in order, are the 4.5, 4.75, almost 5 stars, but I still think about these books so much. Like last year I read The Arc of Undying, which was a 4.5, but I still think about that book so much. If the author wants to write that fucking sequel, please. We start with Deep End by Hazelwood. I know, a shocker. Ex-professional swimmer, loved the book about a professional swimmer and a diver getting together. I know, a shocker. I found it really light. I wanted at that time a book that was light, that was fun, that was a little bit smutty. This is a perfect introduction in the world of BDSM. A lot of people said it was too light, a lot of people said it was too heavy, which I found honestly funny to say. BDSM doesn't have to be super dark to be BDSM, just the dynamics are enough to be that thing, like a sub-dom dynamic. It can be very light. It's not for everybody, it's for that couple. And I found a lot of criticism of this book very funny and silly from somebody who like still is in fandom since I was a very young girl. But a lot of criticism was fair, that's not what I'm saying. I found it at a perfect time in the year. I loved it. I love when we're talking about sports, especially swimming. It's my sport. If my counts are correct, this year it has been 21 years since I started swimming when I was a little girl. Craziness. And then I cannot not talk about The Long Game by Rachel Reid. This is the last book in the Game Changer series. I have a vlog in which I read the whole series. This in particular, this is the 6th book. This is the series that inspired Hiiiii Rivalry, the TV show. Hiiiii Rivalry is based on the 2nd book. It follows Shane and Ilya. This is the 2nd book in Shane and Ilya's story. So this is Shane and Ilya after getting together but still not coming out to the public. It delves into deeper topics such as depression, such as the pressure the media can put on the shoulder of somebody who is in the closet in such a very hyper-masculine sport. I really did. This is my favorite book in the whole series, and I think my favorite book that Rachel Reid wrote, because there's Ilya Rozanov and Shane Hollander. I love them so much, but also because the dynamic between these 2 characters is so genuine. Rachel Reid really knows how to write a genuine feeling, and it never felt forced. It never felt like attempts at humor that doesn't land. The humor always lands with me. I just love this series so much, and this is like the crowning achievement of that series. And then I have the best sci-fi book that I read this year. Sci-fi is my favorite genre. I read There is the Antimemetics Division by Quantum, or QNTM. This is just weird and unsettling. So it delves in the topic of memes, not memes in the memes that we find on the internet, but like meme as a super viral concept that buries itself in the conscience and memories of the people. And there is this Area 51 kind of like government agency that is super top secret, and we follow this agent. She is a 50-year-old woman, I think, and she is investigating the concept of anti-memes, so the eradication of a concept from the memory of the people. And there's this very big and dreadful anti-meme that is going to eradicate consciousness as a whole. in the human race. And so it's a race against time because they keep forgetting that this anti-meme is a thing. And it talks about memory. There's also a romance subplot between this agent and another person that I cannot spoil, but it was so romantic, so unexpectedly romantic. I love this so much. Should we start with the comics? These are all my true 5 stars. These are my favorite books of the year, like the true favorites. If we're talking about graphic novels, because I read a lot of those, I don't really talk about them, but I really should. I read Happy Endings by Lucy Brion. Lucy Brion is a French author, and she has a style that is just so minimal colors, minimal palette. Sometimes it's just doodles on, like, as you can see, and these are all interconnected stories that are meant to have an happy ending and make you happy. The first one is, I think, from a nude model from the Academy of the Arts, and then there's another one that is more sci-fi that follows 2 time travelers, agents that are investigating, and then there's another one that is this guy gets hired as a gardener in a cemetery, and there's maybe ghosts, and they're all interconnected at the end, and this is meant to keep you happy. And it did. It's my favorite graphic novel of the year. Not only the style is so vibrant, even with such little color, but I just thought it was so heartwarming, and in a way that it's not too, like, I don't know, too sappy or too sugary. This is just a perfect graphic novel for when you're feeling down. Since the year was so crazy, I went back to one of my favorite series of all time when it comes to mangas. This is Aitsu no Daihonmei, or His Favorite, by Suzuki Tanaka. This is a queer high school story about these 2 kids. One of them is really short, he's considered very ugly, he has a scar under his eye, and he is a loser at his high school. And then there's the other super popular, super handsome guy who is obsessed with him, and they get together, and it's comedic, it's very hilarious, but it's also very heartfelt, very heartwarming. Again, you just want them to succeed, and then it's so over the top, it's so funny. If you're down, again, please check out this series. I want it to never end, and I want it to get translated into Italian. Now we get to horror. I apparently have a favorite for every genre because I started a year right. I started with Summer Suns by Mandelo. This is a gothic southern horror, okay? Don't even talk to me. It's also queer. The protagonist's best friend, apparently he went to college without notifying his best friend, the protagonist. And at that college, he took his own life. And the protagonist is like, absolutely fucking not, he would never do that. The protagonist also starts to get hunted by poltergeists, and he thinks, that's my best friend, he's trying to tell me something. So he transfers to this mysterious college that's in the south, and it's the summer, it's suffocating, everything is so sticky. And he meets his best friend's former other friends, and he starts an investigation, but he also, like, the poltergeist that is hunting him is starting to hurt him with how much he wants to communicate, and it's so eerie and spooky. There's also, like, the best narrative tension ever written. Like, it's so good, but there's also, like, the sexual tension between the protagonist and another character and his former best friend. It's so tense. I was so, like, my muscles were so tight while reading. And there was one time, I have a vlog in which I read this, and you can see that I could only read like a sentence or 2 in a specific chapter, and I had to, like, turn around and pace my room because so, like, I felt my heart beating way too fast. I think the resolution of it all was a little bit expected. Like, I expected what was happening, but everything else was so grandiose and just so, I don't know, consuming that I still think about that book like 12 months later. It was incredible, truly incredible. And then a memoir. I know, that's so random, but I read My Roman Year. I think that's what it's called in English. In Italian, it's Educazione Sentimentale, which translates to Sentimental Education, by Andrè Aciman. He is the author of Call Me By Your Name, Find Me, White Nights, I think it's called. I read everything by this man because I really love his writing, even though sometimes he writes bad books, but I love his writing. This is the best thing that he's ever written for me. This recounts his year that he had to spend in Rome because he was kicked out of Egypt for being Jewish with his mother and a part of his family, his brother, and he goes to Rome and he hates it there. He hates it. The moment that he goes back to some of his parents, maybe in France, in the US, he starts to love this, he starts to miss Rome and what Rome represented to him. And this is such a, again, genuine, deep way to talk about a city. Especially Italian cities are very, very hard to talk about because of the heavy history. I got sucked into, I did not want it to end, especially when he was coming to terms with his sexuality. He at one point at random falls in love with a boy in the tram, and then he falls in love with another girl, and there's this back and forth between his culture and Italian culture and the French side of this family, and the fact that he wants to go to the US, but also his sexuality and his struggles at school. I think it was so fascinating and also written very well. We are down to my top 2. Everything else could be in kind of an order, but this top 2. Yeah, there was no way that I was not going to talk about the husky and his white cat Shizun. Again, I have a vlog in which I read the whole series. I reread the first part of the series because I had already read it, and then read for the first time the official translation for the ending. This is a Domei series. It's comprised of 10 actual volumes of story and an 11th volume of short stories, like epilogue stories. This is just the best. Very adult series, very gritty, very brutal in the way that it portrays sexual assault and violence and war, and also backstabbing and revenge. The protagonist at the beginning of the first book, we find him in a very weird place in his life. He has become the emperor, but like a tyrannical emperor. He's very brutal, he has killed everybody that crossed him, and he finds himself completely alone. There is no one that remembers him from before he was a tyrant, and there's just nobody who loves him anymore. So he's like, I have conquered the world. I am going to ingest poison and die. That's exactly what he does. He dies, and then he gets reincarnated in the version of himself that is still a 16-year-old. And so he's like, well, this time I want to do things differently in regards of 2 people. The person that I was deeply in love with and the person that I hated the most, which was his Shizun, his master. Of course he falls in love with another person, but the road that he walks to get there, it's so, from, I think, I have volume 4 in my hands. I think from volume 5, I started giving 5 stars. It is just incredibly written, very well paced. Even though there are some lulls in the story, you welcome them because everything else is so tense and filled with world building and character building. The characters are some of the most well written ever. They change so much, even the villains. It's just so compelling following them. The love story, don't talk to me about it. So good in the way that you ache for everyone, not even just like the protagonist, like the secondary character, the tertiary characters, but especially the love between the protagonist and this other person that I'm not going to spoil. Beautiful in a way, but also so painful because so much has happened between the first time that they meet and the last time that they meet. There was also a scene, I think it was in volume 7, one of the most beautiful scenes that I've ever read, like point blank. I was crying my heart out because I'm not usually a crier, but I do cry when there's a very good scene. The atmosphere that the author created was so immersive and colorful and sorrowful. It was just sublime. And then, for the people who truly know me, you would know what book I'm going to show you. Again, I have a vlog in which I read this series. Thank God I have a vlog because I still cannot talk about this book. This is going to be one of my favorite books of all time. If you don't recognize the cover, because this is the Italian edition, this is Assassin's Fate. This is the last book in the realm of the Elderling series by Robin Hobb. It's massive. It's so chunky. I finished it in a week. It's more than 1,000 pages, and I still cannot talk about this series, especially this last book, without getting kind of teary. I don't even know how to describe the emotion that I'm feeling. Every time that I want to talk about this book, my brain just freezes and is like, this was too painful, don't talk about it, don't think about it. It was just one of the best fantasy series that I've ever read. And I think the last 200 pages of this book in particular, the last book, this is, I think, the 15th, 16th book in the series. Some of the best fantasy writing that you'll ever find. This is a high fantasy set in medieval times. It talks about dragons, it talks about magic, and it talks about the protagonist, who is the bastard child of the king in waiting that gets killed at the beginning of the first book. And so the protagonist gets trained as an assassin, never to be seen, but always there, following people and conversations, and you just follow him and another cast of characters that are in different places in the country. This is the last book out of all of them. It's also the last book in the Fitz and the Fool relationship. There are no words to describe how much I loved and was pained and hated and loved again this series, especially this book. A lot of people did not like this last installment, this last trilogy. I think this book is the best out of all of them. My favorite, like my subjective favorite, why? My subjective favorite is, I think, the Tonyman trilogy, the one before that. But I think objectively, this is the best. This is, oh, fuck off. This last trilogy was a little bit too long sometimes. Especially in the second book, we meander a little bit too much. But overall, I loved every page of it. I love every page of following Fitz and another character that I cannot spoil. I just don't even know how to talk about it because it was just real. That's the best way that I can put it. It was real. These characters were real people. They were not even just three-dimensional or genuine. They were just real. They were real people. They made mistakes up until the end because they're human, because they're real. It was very painful. If you're not prepared to get your heart broken several times, I would advise against this series. But again, this is one of the most beautiful and captivating and just downright good fantasy series out there. My last thoughts every time that I go to sleep, they go to Fitz and the Fool. Okay, this was long, but I think it's easier to talk about the books that you actually despised than the books that you loved, because sometimes you're just, it was so good. It was just good. But this time I wanted to articulate my thoughts a little bit better. Here's to us, to many exciting things, and this is the end of the video. I have some socials. If you want to follow me, they're down below. I also have a Substack for my Italian friends who wants to see me review these books in a little bit more detail. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye! Happy New Year!